Great. Yeah. So actually, that pause there, I just thought I'm gonna have a look at this, and I started to listen. It's a really catchy tune. This, I can see why.
Yeah, it's of its time.
It's definitely of its time. Yeah.
I can see why that would be used. I mean, to be honest with you, it's very upbeat and there's a lot of energy to it. It's very bouncy, right?
Yeah, it's basically a song about having an affair. If you listen to the lyrics, that's what it is. So I think it suited quite well. Yeah.
No, it's great. And I mean, I'd seen when I was looking at your sort of career, Jynine, before, and I was looking through, and I had spotted this When I Dream. So when you mentioned it, I thought, I'm sure I've seen a clip somewhere of this, and I found it on YouTube.
Oh dear. Oh, that is definitely of its time.
Yeah.
Hey, well, look, obviously the guys found something in it. It's the Carry On London team. So
yeah.
Maybe like you say, we use your, we can't pay you.
Yeah.
What was it Peter Rogers once said? I think famously, he said, "I'll do anything for my actors apart from pay them more money." Good old Peter.
Yeah, that was the song initially, I think, that got the interest. And then, of course, there was the No Reason, which I think, from the point of view of conversations I had later, was the one that we're going to use at the award ceremony, supposedly. But they did want pretty much both those songs free, from what I could gather. There was never any mention of any monetary value attached to them.
Just a pause for me.
I mean, sometimes it's like if you've got such a big film coming up from such a cult series as a Carry On, they use your music. It's almost to the point where you kind of think, well, if that gets me the publicity, it's a bit sort of quid pro quo.
Oh, yeah, we didn't mind.
Oh, no, we didn't mind. We weren't bothered. Yeah, happy enough to go for it. I mean, who were we?
But I know, Tim, you mentioned in one of your emails that auditions for extras as well. It even got as far as they were looking for. Was it Bristol?
Yeah, that was the Bristol thing. Yeah, I've been desperately trying to find information on that as well, but we were sent again some sort of press junket that they were having in Bristol. This sort of open auditions for extras, and the only criterion that I could see or I can remember from this press junket was they had to be buxom, they had to be young female, and PC comes to mind. But
great.
Some sort of nice
Can you imagine these days having a brief like that? You've got to have a certain size asset.
Yeah. But I do remember seeing it. I do remember it happening, and it got to that point down in Bristol. I've just been looking for some of this information, and I've got the very original press release. Again, I sent you a picture, I think, today.
Yeah.
With this original press release on, and it came off James Black, because at the bottom of the press release, if you just look in tiny writing, it's James Black's thing upside down, so he sent it out. And it was Lenny Love's Limo Company. That's what it was.
That was it.
Lenny Love's Limo Company. Yeah, Lenny Love's Limo Company. And it was a two-folded thing. It was going to centre around the limo company and the supposed Oscars, which were called the Herbits. That's what it was. Yeah, so that's what it was going to be. The Herbits.
Yeah.
And that was the original press junket.
And I think it pretty much did. This story stay pretty much the same over those 9 years. It didn't really deviate away from limos and awards. It was pretty much. I think it was a sort of.
Well, again, I've got a brief that Brian Levson had written in 2005, I think it is, where he said he was just putting the polishing, the finishing touches, and it was due to film next spring. That was in 2005, and he'd sent that out to everybody. It was all finished, script had all been done, signed off. It was just polishing it. And 2005 is when, spring 2005 was when it was scheduled to start filming. So everybody be ready, pretty much, for them, was what they were saying.
But it's strange. It doesn't feel like nearly 20 years ago, but not to me as a fan and as a sort of, with the interest I've got in the series, in that I remember this as though it was literally 5 years ago. In fact, when you contacted me, Tim, and we looked back and I thought, good grief, 2003, that's 21 years ago nearly. Well, it is.
Yeah.
I know, yeah.
That was Because back then I was down in Pinewood for the events. They used to run the some of the special carry-on events, and Peter would often turn up to them. They'd charge a fee for a ticket, and you could go down there. And this is where I first met one of my good chums, Maurice Bright, who was associated back then with Pinewood and doing these events, and subsequently Elstree. But he was the one that sort of pioneered these events. So actually, the Whip It In, as we now call it in Retro Boy, the events that we're doing are born from that. It was because Peter gave his blessing for them to be carried on, you know, forgive the pun, but after Pinewood stopped. And it's strange really that, you know, even though we're still, I mean, I did one in June last year and we got some, it was a sellout, it's still a sellout. And you think, well, if they're so, you know, if they're so vilified, if they're so sort of frowned upon and they're still a little bit lowbrow for people, clearly there's a fan base that's still out there. And some of the guests that came to our events were of all ages, all walks of life, all backgrounds, from very young people through to the, you know, older people, true collectors, through to people that have only just seen a carry-on film maybe for the first time that year, but that fell in love with it. So there is still a love for it, despite the world that we're now in, where nobody dare breathe without it offending someone.
Yeah.
It's quite sad when you see them rerun on TV with all the little disclaimers that are put up front, and some of the edits that hack it to bits. It's rather sad.
Well, the thing is, I mean, you know, you look at it, and the core cast, of course, a lot of them did have quite tragic lives, personal lives, and quite, you know, they weren't happy people. It was like it's the tears of a clown and all that sort of jazz, isn't it? But ultimately, you know, you speak to people now, and from all walks of life, ethnicities, backgrounds, different sexuality, they weren't offended by it. You know, and it says, well, actually, you know, I mean, the point that you made earlier about the Bristol auctions, and you know, that's why I was smiling, because inwardly I'm thinking, oh my God, you
can't do that.
It's like, well, you can, but, you know, you get yourself in a spot of bother. So, but I think the interesting bit of that is the question, well, can you make a carry-on film these days, or would it have to be something totally different? And one of the questions I was going to ask you is, you know, I mean, when I asked should it have been made, of course you want to be involved in it, and you know it's a bit of a daft question, but I guess would it have flown? Would it have done anything? I mean, worst films out there, right? Worst ideas.
When we've read the beginning, the introduction of it, the script,
the bit that sent.
I was like, I thought that's not bad actually. That is quite good. I can see that, and because I was expecting it to be typical carry on, but no, it just seemed to have that like modern, it's sort of comedy, and it was. I would have gone to see it, put it that way.
The thing was, Brian Levson and I can't remember his writing partner who did the script tidy up, and they'd just come off the Booze Cruise. They'd had the success with the Booze Cruise on TV. And my family, obviously, the writers of the family. So, of course, they were used to more modernistic comedy, and quite celebrated in TV. Not so much on film, but certainly in TV. And they had a very modern take on where they wanted Carry On to be. And when we spoke to him, he was, as I say, he was very much for the older carry-ons, but he definitely stated that it's going to be modern. It's not going to be, you know, the sort of, how can I say, the same joke that we use over and over again, like in Carry On Columbus, where I've hot-footed it from, and then the feet being on fire type.
Yeah. And there was a lot of that in Columbus, wasn't there? There was a lot of that.
Yeah, there was. There was a lot of the older jokes being brought back. Yeah, he said, we're not going to go down that route, because that was of its time.
Sure.
And I remember him saying that. But yeah, you're right. The original scripts that we did actually get to see was good. Yeah, and you could see that it could be a good comedy film.
I mean, I think, Jynine, you said in an interview, I don't know if it was a BBC piece or the Popcorn bit, that, you know, about British talent, homegrown talent. And that's sort of something I've always been quite keen and passionate about. We're bloody good at what we do, right? You know, you've got all these big American sort of, you know, blockbusters and God knows what, and that's fine. And there's a place for it. But also, I think, in terms of filmmaking in this country, particularly, I'm not sure about comedies. I don't know really You know, I can't think back to the last, not the film, TV, absolutely. You mentioned My Family there, which is something I personally like that as well. Benidorm is another one. And in fact,
Yeah.
you could argue with Darren Litton with Benidorm that that's essentially almost a modern Carry On Abroad in many respects. And in fact, it had Amanda Barry, didn't it? Amanda Barry, Melvin was in it, Sherry Hewson.
Yeah.
So it's almost like it is possible, but is it, you know, so it's not on her. So I can kind of see where his vision was with that, I guess, in terms of fighting for
definitely.
it.
Oh, no,
I remember you said about Amanda Barry, I think, Jynine, you know, sort of being the next young Amanda Barry and stuff. And I can kind of see that as well, because particularly.
I don't remember that.
Yeah. But it's
Yeah.
bizarre because I saw Amanda in London when she was at an event, probably, I don't know, maybe 2010, 2011, I can't quite remember. But I asked her, I said, you know, why weren't you in Columbus? Because they are made all these offers. Frankie Howard, you know, he died before he was in it, and a couple, Bernie Breslaw and Joan Sims, turned it down. And she just said, darling, we weren't asked. Which I thought, you know, somebody like Amanda Barry with the iconic role she had in Cleo. So you can't fathom the head of how they cast these things. If you know, but obviously Valerie Leon was potentially approached, as you said.
Yeah, she was. Yeah, and as I say, the only conversation I remember having with her was the fact that she was adamant it was never going to go ahead. I don't think she ever signed for it, but she was completely adamant it would never happen. I don't know whether or not that was because you could see the shambolic way things were panning out at the time. Or,
I think there's a story about that, Tim. I think she was at an event. This is I could be a bit rusty on this one, but there was an event at Pinewood, and Valerie was there and Peter was there, and I think Valerie was being interviewed. It could have been one of the anniversaries, might have been the 40th in 98, or maybe just after, because I think 98 was a bit early for London, but certainly around that time. And she said she was making some speech to this piece of camera saying, it's not going to happen, this, that, and the other, giving it a bit of a slag off. And Peter was there and he overheard it all. And I think he waited till he got his spot on the stage with the mic, and he basically outed her and basically gave her a one back, as Peter did in them two sentence put downs. And I think she was sort of, oh God, he's heard me. It's like, oops. So maybe it was wishful thinking after that, if Peter were going to use her.
Possibly so. But she maintained that stance because it was a lot later than that.
But I mean, it must be awkward. Well, not awkward, that's not the right word, but it must be unusual for those that were in it in the sort of heyday of it to then be brought back into the fold, I guess, with, you know, this new bank of people, because of course they can remember, you know, there's all the echoes and the ghosts of the past that are around Pinewood from when they were making the originals, and I guess I guess it'd be quite strange. And I just think it's a crying shame that this is why I wanted to do this piece, because there's not a lot known about it. And you know, one of the things is it's not about it being sensationalist or gossipy, or because I'm quite, you know, I'm quite adamant when I do things that you do it. It's a balanced thing, and it's a nice it's an informal conversation almost about getting the facts from it from people that were there, because there's so much speculation with these things that you just don't know what you sort of what was actually the truth from you know, you've got a lot of hearsay from it, and I just think really, but what you're involved in is technically the very end to date, dare I say it. I mean, who knows what might happen. There's Carry On Campus, Carry On Doctors, and all sorts planned, and it was, we're not sure whether it was. Companies are set up, they go dormant, then they liquidate, but you know, I guess at some point it might be that all this gets revisited. And in some guys, there are unmade scripts that are out there for Carry On, but again, you know, they were back from 60s and 70s. They probably wouldn't stand the test of time or be relevant. Whereas Carry On Doctors or Campus, Carry On COVID. I mean, come on. I mean,
yeah.
Well, the very
waiting to be made.
I think the very end, just before the bankruptcy letter, they'd even gone down the route of Carry On Bananas being the third of a trilogy that they were looking at.
I heard this, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. They were looking at a trilogy from Carry On London, something else. I can't remember off the top of my head what it actually was, to Carry On Bananas being the final of the 3 that we're going to try and shoot back to back. So we had all the cast members sort of there at the time. A bit like a Back to the Future, where we'll film them all in one go. At least we've got them. And we can release them.
But that's what they did in the originals, right? They'd be shot pretty much back to back on a breakneck speed on a very strict budget. So maybe again that formula was. I've heard of Carry On Bananas. I don't know for a minute what it was about or what it possibly could have been about.
No, I know that what's his name? He's now in trouble. He's in court for lewd behaviour is the best way that I can describe it at the moment. He's adamantly denying it. He does his own podcasts where, Russell Brand, where he's outing people.
Yes.
And Russell was actually tied into that one, Carry On Bananas.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, supposedly. And again, allegedly, supposedly. But it was Russell's name that was sort of bandied about. Because this was at the very end of sort of wind down of Carry On London, that Russell was now the new main character. I assume taking over from where Sean had left off.
Had gone.
And he'd become the big sort of star as such he was going to be. And then it just fizzled completely after that. But Carry On Bananas and thinking about it, with what's happened with him in the press at the moment, probably not the best time.
Exactly, which harks back to the question: could they, is Carry On of its time? And it's a crying shame. I watch it on ITV. I mean, I've got all the original stuff here, DVDs and things I've been collecting for too long, and I've probably spent far too much on it in my life. And often, my other half will be like, "Yes, we do need a holiday this year," or "You do know this needs doing." And so I have to rein it in a bit. But it's testament. They recently sold. I don't know. You maybe have seen this. They sold an original script from Carry On Clear. It was the original first draft from Talbot Rothwell, who of course was Tolly Rothwell was the main guy, the writer for the Carry Ons. Absolute genius. And it's come about, this script, from, I'm not quite sure where, it was an auction house. It might have been down Bristol, actually. It was down south from me anyway. And it got his handwritten sort of notes inside it, which made it even more special. And it went for, I think, just shy of 850 quid for this tatty old. So there's clearly still a massive interest in stuff, So whatever you've got for London, just keep hold of it, because one day you might be in the V&A or the BFI.
Trying to find stuff that we had. We had loads of stuff. Unfortunately, we've moved from North Wales since.
Right.
And obviously in moving, things have got boxed up. Thrown in the back.
It's like you said though, Tim, wasn't it? That back then there were no smart cameras. I mean, I know when we saw Leslie Phillips down there, I've got some very grainy. It was one of the old cameras, you wind it on. It was, and although it was only 05, 04, I mean, the smartphones we've got these days, you could do whatever, can't we? You lose it, is what I'm saying, unless you've printed it, like you say, or you've got card copies.
Well, we moved, you see, from North Wales. We had like a 4-bedroom bungalow, and we've moved to we bought a hotel. This is what this is. And of course we live in 2 rooms.
So our 4-bedroom bungalow is literally in the loft, or
wow.
In storage. So we're hoping that we're hoping to sell up anyway now. We've had enough.
We've done it here now. Yeah. We're getting too old.
So we're looking forward to basically getting everything back, and just seeing what we've got and finding everything again, because everything is just all packed away.
It's interesting. I mean, I'm limited on storage space here, and I can't put much in the loft, particular paper or anything that's cardboard or paper based, because you get damp, you get mildew. So I've got to be dead careful.
It disintegrates.
It'll just disintegrate. And I've got some wonderful stuff actually from Columbus. Some of the original concept artwork and some of the acetates that they did for the original poster and the teaser. And when I was in there at Christmas, getting the Christmas tree down, as you do, and all that, I suddenly found this box, and it was getting a little bit mildewy. And I thought, oh, good grief, I know what that is. So I've swiftly got it down, and it's been rehomed. But you've got to be very careful with it. But
Funny enough, a DVD which I found of the popcorn interview.
right.
It's on DVD. I could probably get our son to try and burn it or get it copied onto a pen drive.
Yeah.
It's quite informative, because at the time we were given, as I say, information on what we could say. And also, they were allowed on popcorn to use clips from the old Carry On films and talk about the old Carry On films. So it's quite a lengthy piece. And it literally goes into depth about the Carry On films itself.
That'd be
It's
great.
got clips from abroad, it's got clips from Carry On films. And then it's got the cat. Then it talks about London, and obviously it talks to you.
Yeah.
But it's sort of at the time when it went out, it was who the cast members that they knew were signed into it are there, and they sort of throw up the photographs. And I'm sure Britney Spears is actually one of the pictures that comes up. I'm sure that is one. I haven't seen it for about 20 years, so I'm not sure. I'm almost positive it is, but that will tell you at the time who was actually signed in. But I need to get my son to have a go at.
If you could do that, no, there's no rush to it at all, and don't go into any trouble. If there's any cost, let me know. I'm more than happy to make sure that you don't be out of pocket on it. I was going to say,
unlike the London lot, yeah.
Exactly. Well, any more out of pocket, any more. I mean, the interesting thing is with the carry-ons, it's the famous thing where they're all paid set fees and no more, and often, very wrongly, the women were paid less than the gents, and one thing and another. But then they'd often have a curveball where they'd bring, Elkie Sommer in, or they'd bring Phil Silvers, pay them a fortune as a cameo. Now, if I'm thinking about this with Britney Spears, which I just still find absolutely fascinating, that all the money would have been just for her fee, I would have imagined, and you'd have probably that in great waiting.
Exactly, which is why they obviously needed more money and they couldn't pay anybody else anything.
Kind of punching a bit, just drop it down.
Just drop it down a little. Get somebody that's known in the UK. Try and focus on the UK. Don't look at an American market at this point in time.
No. And what about in terms of sort of final thoughts on Carry On London? And if you had to sort of, what's your sort of thoughts on this? How do you feel about? I mean, I guess the experience there is something I personally would have loved, even if it had come to nothing. You're still part of the Carry On story, right? Regardless of whether it went.
No, it was. We had some fun with it.
Yeah, but it was still gutting. I mean,
when the final letter did come through, because even up to that point, you knew it wasn't going ahead.
But we kept thinking, well, maybe, and then it was like, it's definitely not going ahead.
It's when they write to you and tell you that you owe them money, that's probably more.
What we didn't realise at that point injector, because obviously I got in touch with the receivers. Well, what's happened? What's going on? I said, you obviously you've got a claim because of all the expenses and things that you haven't taken. And we didn't claim anything realistically all the way through from day one, and we were doing an awful lot of publicity for them. The only thing we didn't do.
Yeah.
Well, no, I got paid.
You got paid for certain interviews. Yeah. By the company that interviewed us, as opposed to.
Well, exactly. This is the thing, isn't it? It wasn't from them. It's going to be from.
No, it wasn't. Yeah, but as I say, when it got to the cans thing, we thought, oh no, we spent it.
Not with two kids. Not with two kids
as well. Yeah.
No, and I know, but it's quite sweet when you said, about the Batman car, the prototype in the Carry On London office.
No, they were lovely. Honestly,
they showed them all around.
They showed Audra to Jack and Harry on a full tour of Pinewood,
which you don't normally.
The gardens, everything.
It showed them the cave, Bang Bang, the cave.
Yeah,
where the kids went into the cave.
From Chitty Bang Bang.
They showed the garden where she's sitting on the swing, which is in the Carry On film as well.
Yeah.
They showed them. They showed them the Bridget Jones set, which was where the cemetery scene was. The second Bridget Jones, wasn't it?
I don't know.
Second one.
But there was a graveyard.
And they showed them the soundstage for 007 and
Yeah. Oh, there was
So
a
they were like,
yeah.
"Oh,
And funny enough, at that time, because you were filming Charlie, they
yeah,
were using the soundstage for the lake for the factory. It was basically all chocolate supposedly,
Wow.
where would have
So was
been.
this, I meant to ask, you mentioned Charlie. Is this the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory that was done at Pinewood?
yeah,
Yeah,
Tim
The
Burton.
Tim
Tim Burton.
yeah." I was just a Saltnuts girl. You can see me for pauses.
Yeah, you have to pause. It's a blink and gone though.
Yeah, that's
Twice.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember I was I was down there. In fact, I'll tell you when it was. It was back then. I was invited onto the Weakest Link with Anne Robinson. I did an episode of that, and I came third. I didn't do particularly well. But one of the runners on the set, it was a film at Pinewood, and one of the runners at the set said, "Oh, come in." They sort of took me through this fire escape. And I don't know if I used to smoke a bit back then, a bit of a rebel. I used to have my menthols, and whether I'd gone out for a fag or something, I can't remember. But they said, "Oh, that building there is where they're filming Charlie and the Chocolate Factory." And the guy that I spoke to, he said, "You know, because I mean, obviously Tim Burton just complete genius, but he said he's quite eccentric, and he comes on a push bike every day, and basically there's no airs and great. He just comes on this push bike, this absolute icon of cinema and what have you. It's just incredible, and I do remember that. So we would have been probably there at the same time.
Roughly at the same time. Yeah, of course.
Because obviously he was there as well.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like the big warehouse scene with the factory. So and there was it the like cars, the weird
the weird
cars
Wonka cars and all that sort of
but
thing.
it was supposed to have been like top secret as well, where it's being filmed.
No cameras allowed and all that sort of thing. And there I was taking pictures of the kids out there, and I've got a picture of Harry. Funny enough, here I've got a picture of Harry outside the sound sets, and yeah.
I mean, it's like Jynine said.
But they were lovely, honestly. That Carry On London Limited to us were amazing.
Yeah.
They kept inviting us. I met Peter as well, Peter Rogers. He signed a thing for Deck. Like a picture of himself, he signed for Deck. And he gave Deck Carry On, was it Carry On Nurse? No, Carry On Matron, I think, signed by him as well at the bottom.
Oh,
So,
lovely.
yeah, I mean, everybody was lovely to us. They really were. The whole of the crew. We got invited to every one of the events.
Yeah,
which was brilliant. And we were kept in the loop. I think we were the only ones, because we were getting people like Albert contacting us, asking us what did we know.
I saw the emails briefly that you sent me a few screen grabs from, and clearly, even reading those, he was still of the opinion, wasn't he, that this is going to go ahead as
Oh,
far
yeah,
as,
yeah. Oh, he'd signed in roughly about the same time as we did.
Yeah.
And we had the conversations with it at various events we bumped into. And he was more asking us, because for whatever reason he was very much out of the loop once he was away from Pinewood. Yeah. So he was asking us, "Have you heard anything? What's going on?" And we would just relay back what we knew.
And of course, now 20 odd years later, we've lost even more of the core guys that have gone. Fenella, Barbara.
Met her.
Yeah, Fenella. Yeah, we met Fenella, which was lovely.
We didn't know.
We didn't know who it was
until we were driving home.
And then we realised.
Oh my God, that's who he was.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, I'm eternally grateful for you doing this as well. I'm just mindful of time, but I'd love to pick up. We've got a thing to do. What I'm going to do as well, with your blessing, is, because based on the emails, I'm going to, for this, I'll make a donation to the Teenage Cancer Charity as well, just as a thank you. If that's okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was brilliant. Yeah. And that was Harrison. That was our son. He got cancer, obviously.
Yeah. We'll keep in touch. Anything else? And what I'll do is I'll just check you're happy for what we use, what I don't use. I don't think we've discussed anything that we can't really use, but if there's anything you suddenly think, then let me know. But
no, because everything that we've got was what we were officially sent and what we could say. So
5 seconds.
Right. Okay.
Oh, 5 seconds. Thank you so much, guys. I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.